Greetings, this is Greg. Update on my EcoBoost powered Ford Mustang. It's now over 300 wheel horsepower, running in the high 12s at the drag strip. It's doing this with a very reliable and inexpensive package from Compulsion. At the time of this video, the entire package, meaning the tune, the intercooler, and the air intake, is only 860 bucks. I think taking a car from the low 14s into the high 12s on pump gas for that amount of money is pretty good. Full disclosure, my kids own Compulsion. Of course, I want them to do well. I helped develop this tune with a specific goal, and that goal was running in the 12s with better than stock reliability and without breaking the bank, and I think we did that. Before we get to the time slips from the drag strip, let's take a look at a dyno pull. Now, a lot of times, you'll see vendors showing a dyno pull that shows a car on the dyno, and then they cut the video and go to a dyno graph. This is often an indication of fraudulent dyno claims. How do you know that dyno graph was from that car, let alone that dyno pull? On the other hand, what you should see is something like what I'm doing here. I'm showing the actual run, so there can be no doubt the run is from this car. During the run, you'll notice the numbers in the 4 boxes to the left. That's OBD2 data from the car itself. The numbers in the 7 boxes to the far right of the screen are measurements from the dyno, although the manifold pressure and oil temperature boxes don't mean anything because those sensors were not connected to the car. Right now we're doing the coast down, and once it gets down to the start RPM, the dyno will calculate and display the results of the test, and it's going to be a little bit over 300 wheel horsepower. That's where the car is consistently. So there we go, 306.5 wheel horsepower. In fact, it almost overlaps the previous run that was on the screen. You can see the only real difference is at the very start, and that was just a function of how aggressive I was with the gas pedal at the start of the run. 306 wheel horsepower, I'm pretty happy with that. And what I'm going to do next is put this run side by side with the stock run. So let's do that. As you can see, this package gives an increase at the wheels of over 60 horsepower and 61 pound-feet of torque. However, it's not really the peak numbers that matter here. When going down the drag strip, this is the RPM range that matters. The car, when in drag mode, shifts at 6,200 RPM, thereabouts, and the engine speed never really drops below 5,000 RPM because the transmission's gear ratios are so closely spaced. The only time the Mustang's engine is below 5,000 RPM during a quarter-mile run is at the start, and that's not for very long. The car has a very steep first gear and a torque converter that allows RPM to build up fast when it launches. Plus, it's traction limited at low speeds in first gear anyway, so more power down there wouldn't help it much. The point of all this is that while I bumped power up below 5,000 RPM, and by a pretty good amount, the real focus here in terms of horsepower was on the RPM range that matters the most, which is 5,000 to 6,200. When you push the pedal to the floor in this car, it will downshift using its 10-speed automatic transmission to keep the RPM in that range. It's there we have larger gains than the peak numbers would indicate. In fact, at 6,200 RPM, which again is where this car shifts when in drag strip mode, we have a gain over stock of 95 wheel horsepower, and that's really what's getting this car down the track. The tune is available at a very low price via bench tuning. It is, of course, also available via OBD2 port flashing, but at a higher price, as you would then have to buy the tune with an Alien Tech power gate to flash it on through the OBD2 port. But either way, it's a very competitively priced tune and with absolutely proven power and performance. The other mods giving these results are the Compulsion intake. It looks great and does a good job of getting cold, high-pressure air to the turbo inlet without sacrificing filtration. The intercooler is a big help here. Ford used a very small intercooler from the factory which holds the car back. This intercooler is big, and most of the cooling air that passes through the core exits below the radiator. That's a big help as airflow through it is not blocked by an air conditioning condenser and radiator package, causing that airflow to stack up right behind it. I tested a number of intercoolers, and this is the best one for a street and track car under 500 horsepower. It's not specifically a Compulsion intercooler. You can find these elsewhere. The advantage in getting it from Compulsion is that they are checked for leaks and the brackets are checked on a jig before being sent to the final customer, so you won't get a bad one. These things come from China, and it seems about 1 in 10 are damaged somehow before they get to the United States. Again, at EC, every one of these intercoolers is checked before it's sent out, and there are a lot of them in stock, which should mitigate the risk of the price going up due to tariffs, at least for a little while. Let's get to the drag strip results. Here is the first run. Notice the car number, number 305, the density altitude, 2,694 feet, and the elapsed time, 13.064 seconds. For some reason, this time slip didn't show the trap speed, but I knew after this first run that the car would run in the 12s. That's a high density altitude, and it was almost 80 degrees out, but the sun was going down, so it was starting to cool off. I felt it was a near mathematical certainty that this car would run in the 12s before the evening was over. The next run, the density altitude was slightly better. The car ran slightly quicker, 13.053. Note the 60-foot times are just under 2 seconds. I was very happy with that. Keep in mind this event was a test and tune at the drag strip. There was no serious track preparation like you would see at a big event. They were only doing what was needed to keep the track safe. Before I headed to the track, I asked my son, what are the stickiest tires we have in this shop? And he rolled out from a back room some, quote, street tires, unquote, that looked very grippy. The downside is that these tires were not really for this car, and the extra tire height turned my 3.55 to 1 ring and pinion into effectively a 3.43 to 1 gear set. So after some internal debate about grip versus gear ratios, I put the stickier tires on the car at the shop and drove to the track. I also learned later that I had way too much air pressure in them and was only using about 70% of the tire's width for grip. All that said, I'm very happy with the results, but I do think I could have planned this out a bit better. This is a picture from the track photographer. It can be found on the drag strip site in this album, which proves the date and car number on the time slips match my car. I mention this because I see obvious false claims for quarter-mile results all the time. If the results are legit, they are easy to check. The time slips can be found on the track's downloadable phone app. It's then just a question of matching the time slips to the car with the number, as I have done here. Here's the same picture in big high-resolution format. The photographer, Michael Rush of Tulsa, sent it to me. I'm pretty impressed with his work. This picture was taken way after dark. I find it hard to get good pictures with the track lighting, but I suppose that's what makes Mr. Rush a professional and me just a guy with a camera. If photography and photographic art is something that floats your boat, you might check him out. The Chevrolet Camaro behind me was one of my favorite cars there that night. It's not an LS conversion. It's a big block Chevrolet V8. That made me happy. It sounded great, and the owner was very pleasant to talk to. He had an interesting motor mount setup in this car, which I had never seen before, designed for quick engine changes. Anyway, back to the time slips. The last one was 13.053, density altitude 2649. Now it's getting cooler. Density altitude is down another 60 feet, and we're running a bit faster, 13.024. You can notice the trend here. Next, a 13.012 with a yet slightly lower density altitude. The car with this tune, intercooling, and intake package is very consistent. Times are dropping reliably with the improving atmospheric conditions. The car itself, very consistent run to run. The next drop in density altitude put us into the 12s, and the next run we ran a little deeper into the 12s. Mission accomplished. They were closing the track down. I went home. Of course, there is the temptation to go faster. Tire pressure, not to mention tire size and density altitude, certainly leave quite a bit of room for improvement here. I could also turn the heat up on the tune as well, but I'm really happy with the car the way it is. I'm not planning on changing anything, at least as far as power producing mods go. I want to stress that the only power adding mods on the car are the 3 I listed: the tune, intercooler, and intake. It does have 2 other mods on it, which are the Borla catback exhaust, which adds essentially no horsepower. My son put it on because he liked the sound. Most of the catback exhaust systems for this car have pipes without a large enough diameter, probably because they're connecting to the factory pipe up front, which is a bit restrictive. I'm planning on leaving the stock downpipe on this car, but the tune can be set up for a performance downpipe if desired. That's a zero-cost option. My Mustang also has the Eurocompulsion intercooler pipes. They don't add any power, but I like the way they look under the hood. In an effort to anticipate the commonly asked questions, yes, the car will run faster under better conditions. However, my official stance, and that of Eurocompulsion, is that this combo runs in the 12.9s. You can certainly look at the results and the trends, in this case, the effects of a 622-foot drop in density altitude, over a number of runs, and you can extrapolate that all the way down to sea level if you would like. This is from dragtimes.com. It's an online calculator which is commonly used for this sort of thing. Another question I think will come up is, can you use the tune without the intercooler upgrade? Well, you won't get the same results. The tune has a lot of protection built into it, and it will pull back power as the temperature of the air in the intake manifold rises. I've tested this extensively by simply shutting off the dyno fans and creating a heat-soaked situation. So yes, you could use it without an intercooler upgrade, but I really would rather you didn't. Plus, if you're going to do this with a bench tune, your car will be down while the ECU is in transit to and from our shop, so use that time to put on the intercooler in the intake. You'll be glad you did. In short, I'm happy with the way this car is set up. It's fast, reliable, and this package won't break the bank. If you're interested in getting your EcoBoost Mustang into the 12s, I think this is the way to go. Give Euro Compulsion a call. Goodbye and have a great day.